Have you ever wondered what really happens in those final moments? When the heart stops, the machines go silent, and the soul stands on the edge of eternity? Monica James never believed she'd have the answer. But after being declared clinically dead, what she experienced on the other side defied science, shattered expectations, and changed her forever. In the next few minutes, you'll hear a story that may shift how you see life, death, and everything in between. My name is Monica James, and this is something I never thought I'd say out loud, but after what I've lived, or rather, what I died through, I can't keep silent anymore. It happened on July 1st, 2018. The sky above Virginia was soft and cloudless that morning, the kind of summer day that smells like fresh-cut grass and sun-warmed concrete. I remember the heat on my skin as I walked to my appointment, the way the breeze danced in the trees, and yet, despite the beauty around me, something inside me felt empty. I wasn't afraid of death, at least not consciously. But I had been tired for a long time. My body had been whispering for months, shortness of breath, pain behind the sternum, crushing fatigue that no nap could fix. And deep down, I think I knew something was coming. Life had worn me thin. My children were grown and scattered across states. My husband had passed away 4 years earlier, and my days had begun to blur. Meals alone, TV humming in the background, occasional doctor visits breaking the silence. I smiled when spoken to. I thanked the nurses. But I wasn't really living. I was drifting. That afternoon, something shifted. I was in the hospital for what was supposed to be a simple cardiac checkup. I remember sitting on the bed, fidgeting with the edge of the paper sheet, the sterile smell of alcohol and latex thick in the air. A nurse had just stepped out to fetch my latest results when it hit me. First a pressure, then a searing pain behind my ribs. Like something inside me had clamped down and wouldn't let go. I gasped. The room tilted. Then chaos. Monitors beeped into red, voices shouted, footsteps pounded the floors, a rush of white coats. Someone yelled, "Code Blue." Hands gripped my arms. I could see them moving, fast, efficient. But my mind was slipping. It was like I was underwater, hearing everything through a fog of sound. Every heartbeat felt slower, more distant. And then, silence. No pain, no fear, no breath. Just quiet. At first, I thought I had blacked out. But when I opened my eyes, or what felt like my eyes, I was no longer in my body. I was above it, floating, watching. My physical form lay on the hospital bed below, motionless, pale, a nurse performing chest compressions, another adjusting an oxygen mask, a doctor shouting vitals, his forehead lined with sweat. But none of it seemed real. Not anymore. I wasn't afraid. Isn't that strange? I thought I'd panic. I thought I'd be clawing to get back in. But there was this overwhelming peace, like a soft blanket had been draped over my soul. The kind of peace I hadn't felt in years, maybe decades. I looked down at myself, at the way my hands rested like paper over the blanket, the IV tubes hanging from my arm, the monitor flashing flatline. I should have screamed. I should have been horrified. But instead, I felt weightless. Detached from the pain, the sickness, the loneliness. I was still me, but freer, clearer. I wanted to tell them I was okay, that I wasn't in pain anymore, that I was still here. But I couldn't speak. My voice was gone. My body was gone. I hovered in that space, above the noise, the urgency, watching my life below as if it belonged to someone else. I could see everything, every tiny detail. The way the nurse's fingers trembled, the photograph taped to the wall near the bed, my grandson's drawing, bright with crayons, the cross necklace one of the technicians wore, glinting in the light. But none of it belonged to me anymore. I was a silent observer, untethered. And then, I wasn't alone. Beside me, I felt a presence. Not seen, not heard, but felt. Warm, comforting, as if the very air had thickened with love. A gentle current pulsed beside me, and though no words were spoken, I knew. I was being guided, not forced, not pulled, just accompanied. It didn't feel like a dream. It felt more real than any waking moment of my life. I looked back at my body, at the flurry of hands trying to revive it, at the tear-streaked face of my daughter who had just entered the room, her mouth open in a silent scream. And I remember thinking, should I stay or should I go? But before I could decide, before I could even form the thought fully, I heard it. A whisper. Gentle, firm, unmistakable. There is more for you to see. The moment I heard those words, there is more for you to see, the hospital room began to dissolve around me. It didn't fade like a memory or flicker out like a light. It shifted. Slowly, gently, as if reality itself were melting into something higher. The fluorescent bulbs overhead stretched into long beams of white and vanished. The walls softened, shimmered, and then disappeared. And I was somewhere else. At first, it felt like floating in pure air. No weight, no pressure, just an endless openness. But it wasn't empty. There was light everywhere. Not harsh, not blinding. It was soft and golden, like the first rays of morning sun filtering through your bedroom window in late spring. Warmth soaked through me, not on the skin, but within, like being embraced by something eternal. There were no shadows, no ceiling above or ground below, just presence. I looked down, or what I thought was down, but I no longer had a body in the way I once did. I was form without form, awareness without shape. And strangely, it didn't frighten me. I felt more myself than I ever had when I had bones and skin and blood. Around me, the air hummed, not with noise, but with resonance, like music you feel in your chest more than you hear with your ears. Notes I couldn't name flowed like a river, weaving through the space, each one vibrating with peace. Then I became aware of movement. I wasn't alone. From the glowing expanse ahead, two figures approached. One older, wrapped in a robe the color of aged parchment, his presence steady and kind like a grandfather who had waited a long time to welcome me. The other was younger, radiant, almost translucent, clothed in flowing white that shimmered like water under sunlight. No wings, no halos, just presence, gentle, sure, timeless. They didn't speak, not with mouths, but their meaning poured directly into me like memory. You are safe, the younger being conveyed. You are seen. You are loved. And I believed it. They walked beside me, if you could call it walking, guiding me through what looked like a vast corridor of light. It wasn't made of stone or glass or any earthly material. It was woven from energy itself. Walls pulsed with color, deep sapphire blues, pale golden yellows, waves of soft lavender. Each shade moved like silk in water, alive with purpose. We passed through spaces that shifted like living dreams, meadows that opened and vanished, gardens that glowed without a sun, fountains of liquid light rising and falling in slow rhythm. And the scent, oh, the scent. It was the sweetness of blooming jasmine, the crispness of mountain air, and the comfort of your grandmother's kitchen on Sunday mornings, familiar and divine all at once. Time didn't exist here. Or maybe it did, but not in the way we understand it. I had questions, so many. Where was I? What was I? Why had I come? But before I could form them, I felt a tug, not of force, but of memory, a recognition. I was being taken somewhere important. We reached what I can only describe as a gathering place. It stretched wide in every direction, filled with other souls, some moving, some still, some simply waiting. They weren't transparent or ghostly. They were luminous. Each radiated a soft light, some brighter, some dimmer, but all of them seemed to carry stories within them. A few turned to look at me, not with judgment, but with knowing. I recognized one, a woman. Gray hair, kind eyes, the faintest trace of a smile. She had sat 2 pews behind me at church for years. We had barely exchanged more than nods and the occasional Buona Domenica, but now she looked at me like a long-lost friend. "Monica," she whispered, though her lips never moved. You've come far. I tried to reply, but I had no voice, only emotion, and she understood. Just then, the older figure beside me gestured to a circle forming nearby. Souls gathered, not chaotically, but with grace, as if drawn by something sacred. I felt the pull, too. We moved toward it, and as we joined them, I noticed something strange. Within the center of the circle, there was a doorway, but not a door like we know. It was made of light, vertical and narrow, like a veil being held open between two winds. Beyond it, I could sense something vast, something ancient, something I wasn't ready to name. The souls around me waited, not anxious, not fearful, just present. They are waiting, the younger being said, for clarity, for readiness, for peace. I looked through the veil and felt both awe and sorrow. Some were ready to pass through. Others remained because they still held on to something: anger, guilt, fear. And I wondered, was I one of them? Have you ever had a moment in your life where something spiritual touched you deeply? Share it in the comments so others can feel your light. Suddenly, I became aware of the presence of others. More guides, more souls. Some wandered slowly, hands clasped in reflection. Others sat in silence, surrounded by shimmering forms that pulsed like quiet hearts. A few wept, not from sadness but from release. Then one figure stepped forward. He was tall, maybe once in his 60s, his energy calm and knowing. He didn't speak, but I recognized something in his eyes, like he had been through this before. He looked directly at me. "You're not staying," he said without sound, his voice inside me. Not yet. I wanted to ask why. I wanted to understand. But then another soul approached, a boy no older than 10. Freckles, gentle eyes. He smiled and placed a small hand over his heart. And in that instant, I felt everything. His pain, his joy, his longing, his peace. He had once lived. He had once suffered. He had once been loved. And now, he was light. Tears that weren't physical welled up within me. How could I go back? After seeing this? After feeling this? The older man stepped closer. Because you must. There is more to show you. More to remember. What more? I asked. He lifted a hand and pointed behind me. And there, like a film projector flickering to life, the truth began to unfold. Memories, sharp, vivid, undeniable, began to rise around me, not in flashes, in fullness. And I knew. The review was beginning. The memories did not come like a slideshow or a movie reel. They rose up from within me, blooming in the air around us like living scenes, wrapped in light and shadow. I wasn't just watching my life. I was inside it again, feeling it, reliving it. It began with the smallest of moments. I was 6 years old, sitting in a wooden pew with my legs swinging freely above the floor. My Sunday school teacher, Miss Evelyn, was telling the story of the prodigal son, her voice kind and warm. I could feel the texture of the worn hymn book in my hands, smell the old wood of the church, hear the creak of someone kneeling to pray behind me. At the time, I was only half listening. But now, in this realm, I felt the meaning behind every word she had said. Not just a parable, but a message that had tried to find me even then. Next came my teenage years. I saw myself in the hallway of my high school, laughing with friends. A boy tripped in front of us, scattering his books. I remembered the smirk I gave, the sharp joke that made my friends roar with laughter. I had told myself it was harmless. But now, watching from this place of clarity, I felt the sting of that boy's embarrassment like it was my own. The guide beside me, still silent, radiated a steady compassion that kept me grounded. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. I was being shown not just what I had done, but how it had felt for others. Every choice was connected. Every word carried a weight I hadn't realized. A rush of other memories followed. Holding my newborn daughter for the first time, my hands trembling as I whispered a prayer of gratitude I had long forgotten. Sitting on the kitchen floor at midnight with my teenage son after he'd been heartbroken, offering only a tired sigh instead of my full attention. Donating winter coats to a shelter one December and never realizing the tears of the woman who received one. Turning away from a friend who had asked for help when I was too busy. There was no judgment from the beings around me, only truth. I began to understand that this was not punishment, it was illumination. My life was not being tallied like points on a scoreboard. It was being revealed like a garden, every seed I had ever planted blooming before me. I saw the good I had done, not the big dramatic gestures I once thought mattered most, but the quiet ones. The times I had smiled at a stranger, comforted someone in a grocery store line, called someone who had been forgotten. Each small act glowed with a kind of beauty I can't explain. They shimmered like stars against a velvet sky. But I also saw the wounds I had caused, often without meaning to. Moments of sharpness, moments of pride, moments where I chose silence over love, convenience over compassion. I wept, not with regret, but with recognition. I saw myself clearly for the first time. And then came something I never expected. I was taken into a moment I had never witnessed during my life. A scene I could not have remembered, because I was not there. Yet I felt it as if I had lived it. It was my mother. The morning after I had left home for college, she stood in my empty room, holding my old sweater to her chest. She whispered a prayer, asking God to protect me, to guide me. Her eyes were full of tears. I had never known. I had never thought to ask. More moments like that followed. People I had impacted without realizing. A neighbor who saw me pray once through the window and decided not to take her own life that night. A child I had comforted during a church picnic, who carried that memory like a safety net through years of abuse. The ripple effects of kindness echoed endlessly. And then I heard a voice. Not external. It came from within, and yet it shook the entire realm around me. Now you see, nothing is lost. Everything matters. I turned to the younger being, who was still standing beside me, eyes calm, presence radiant. Why do we see these things? I asked. Because truth is the path to love, they said. The older man spoke next, his tone soft but firm. You lived as if time was your enemy. You rushed, you feared, you hid. But time was never your enemy. It was your gift. Every second a chance to choose love. Their words cut deep, not to wound, but to open. And just when I thought the review was over, a new vision unfolded. This time, it wasn't the past. It was the present. I saw my family. I saw my daughter sitting beside my hospital bed, holding my cold hand and whispering stories from our childhood. I saw my younger brother pacing outside the ICU doors, his head in his hands, finally praying for the first time in years. I saw my best friend Sarah lighting a candle in the chapel, her face streaked with tears, lips mouthing the words, "Bring her back." I wasn't gone. I wasn't forgotten. I was woven into their hearts still. Then the light shifted. It dimmed, not in darkness, but in intimacy. Like a spotlight narrowing. A final memory emerged. It was me, years ago, sitting in a pew, head bowed in a quiet moment. I had prayed, not with words, but with longing. A silent plea. God, if you're real, show me. And now he had. In the silence that followed, I felt it. Something holy, something vast, as if the whole of heaven had leaned closer. And then the younger being extended a hand. There is one more thing you must see. We turned. And in the distance, something began to glow. A door. A gate. A threshold. What lay beyond it pulsed with glory. And I knew. That was where souls met eternity. We stood at the edge of something unspeakably sacred. The threshold shimmered like molten gold suspended in midair. It wasn't solid, yet it pulsed with a gravity that pulled at me, not just my presence, but my very soul. Beyond it, I sensed peace beyond understanding, joy without beginning or end. Not happiness, not pleasure, something deeper. Completion. Wholeness. It called to me. I turned to the younger being beside me, my voice trembling with awe. Is this Heaven? They didn't answer with words. Instead, they offered a smile so full of love that it made my very essence ache. The older man's gaze followed mine toward the gate. His expression was one of reverence and sorrow. "You may enter," he said gently, "or you may return. The choice is yours." That's when the silence fell heavier than it ever had before. I had not expected a choice. I thought the story of my life had ended, that the book had been closed, the final page turned. But now I stood with the pen in my own hand. Behind me was everything I'd ever known: my family, my unfinished words, my ordinary days. Before me was eternity, waiting, luminous. I searched their faces for answers. What happens if I stay? The younger being stepped forward, his voice like wind over still water. Then your soul will be at peace. You will be healed, whole, at home. You will never feel pain again. And if I return? Then you return to pain, to uncertainty, to a broken world that does not always see the light. I swallowed hard. The ache of the decision pressed on me like a tide. Why would I choose that? The older man looked at me with eyes so deep I felt they could see the entire history of my heart. Because the world still needs your light. I turned back toward the gate. The peace of it was overwhelming. It was everything I had ever longed for without knowing how to name it. But then I saw them. My daughter, asleep in a chair beside my hospital bed. My brother holding a rosary with hands that had never prayed before. Sarah lighting another candle with shaking fingers. They were waiting. And suddenly, I knew. I wasn't done. I stepped away from the gate. "I want to go back," I said. The younger being didn't try to stop me. He simply nodded, as if the choice had always been known. The older man extended his hand, placing it gently above what would have been my heart. "Then remember what you've seen. Let it shape everything." And with that, the light shifted again. There was no sound, only motion. The realm around me folded inward, light compressing into a single thread of brilliance. I felt myself drawn backward, as though my soul were being poured into something too small, too fragile. The peace clung to me, even as the weight of gravity returned. I resisted at first, not out of fear, but because I understood what was coming: pain, sorrow, time. But then I felt a single heartbeat. Mine. The rush of cold air. The blinding white of hospital lights. The sting of life returning to every nerve. My chest arched off the bed as breath surged into my lungs like a fire. "She's back!" a voice shouted. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. But I was there, alive. My body trembled under the weight of being human again. My spirit screamed with gratitude and grief all at once. And as I opened my eyes, blurry and burning, I saw them. My daughter's face collapsing into tears, my doctor gripping the rail in disbelief. I wanted to tell them everything. But my voice was still lost somewhere between worlds. Over the weeks that followed, I slowly recovered. The hospital became a place of hushed awe. Nurses who had stopped believing in miracles whispered prayers as they walked by my room. My family watched me with reverence as if afraid I might vanish again. But I didn't vanish. I returned with fire. Not a fire of anger or fear, but of purpose. I began speaking of what I'd seen. First to my daughter, who cried in my arms as I told her about the light, the beings, the truth of every small kindness. Then to Sarah, who held my hand as I described the boy with freckles who had taught me how real love is never forgotten. Eventually to strangers, men and women who had lost hope, who clung to grief, who feared the unknown. I shared it all. I told them their lives mattered, that every act of compassion echoed forever, that they were more than their bodies, more than their pain, more than their past, that death is not the end. I lived differently after that. I prayed with my whole self. I forgave without waiting for apology. I listened longer, held hands tighter, laughed louder. I stopped rushing, I started seeing, and I loved, oh, how I loved. I don't know when my time will come again, but I am not afraid, because I remember. I remember the light, the music, the faces, the love that never ends. And now I live to remind you, you are not alone, you are not forgotten, and when this life ends, it's not the end. It's only the beginning. Subscribe and write your city more amen so we can pray for you by name in our next video.